All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Police and Fire Commission of Fitchburg's June 23rd special meeting. We're back in our original digs, which is kind of nice. I would like to call the meeting to order. First order of business is public appearances for non-agenda items. I do not see anybody, and we didn't have anybody that was going to participate via Zoom. Okay. So moving on to the next item, which is the report from Human Resources.
Yeah, so the PFC members had a chance to look at the survey results that we've received, and I have them up on the screen here. That just went black, so bear with me. There we go. So what I thought I'd do is just kind of walk through the trends of the survey and then turn it over to the commission to talk about kind of what you went through. So,
can I just,
yeah.
Pardon me, can I just ask a question up front? So I have two of the surveys in front of me, and both of them said community. One of them had 55 responses and the other 195. I'm assuming the 55 is from the city responses?
Exactly. So we sent one to city employees only, and then we sent one to the community, and then we had a Spanish version and a Hmong version. We received 2 responses back in Spanish and then 0 in Hmong. So the remaining were English. I did have 16 paper surveys submitted today, so I have those, but I wasn't able to get those on the summary, but we will be able to talk about those at a next PFC meeting. I do anticipate we'll have more paper surveys rolling in this week, and so hopefully we can talk about that at another upcoming meeting. Just to give you a snapshot of the number of surveys we've received in the past, in 2017, when we had the police chief, we had 125 survey responses at that time. And just last year for the city administrator, we had 132 survey responses. This time, counting the 16 that I've received, we're at 268. So we definitely have improved our outreach efforts and improved the number of surveys that we've received. I also included in the packet a listing of all the different places that we got it out. I want to thank you, Rosa, Joe Maldonado, Alder Julia Radafrada, and of course all of you on the commission that have shared it with your networks. But I know a few of you had actually walked around and gave out paper copies to neighborhood leaders. I know that Tom O'Day, you sent an email to the neighborhood association leaders and all the committees and chair members. So thank you so much for doing such a fabulous job of reaching out to people to get the survey out. So the survey did close last night, but it's still actually open. So if somebody goes to our PFC page, they can actually still fill out the survey. Since we're still collecting paper surveys, I would ask the commission to maybe consider keeping the electronic survey open. There's so many processes yet to play. We've got public reception, we've got the panel interviews, the community panel. There's so many different things that any feedback received after this week, we can still use for future processes. But anyway, going back to the survey results. So up on the screen, I just thought I'd walk you through what I found. When we look at the core values that are most critical, if you look at the survey results in total, the 2 core values most critical were accountability and respect. And this was universal with city staff, community panel, community participation. So again, accountability and respect. And then if you scroll down to the most important personal characteristics, this was almost universal across all 3 survey results. Number 1 being diversity, professionalism, collaboration, and integrity. Problem-solving ability, reliability, and flexibility were also pretty popular. And then if you look at leadership qualities, those were also the same for all 3 survey results. So that was really interesting to see that the staff and the community aligned. Communication and community engagement were the 2 most important leadership qualities. So again, communication and community engagement. Other popular ones include collaborative leadership, coaching, and innovation. And then if you look at the demographic overview of those that completed the survey, we had about 58.2% of the 55 responses from city staff that actually came from a police department employee. So we had a really great turnout from police department specific employees. 93.8% of the respondents for the community survey are Fitchburg residents, so quite a few. 11.3% of the community survey respondents did not prefer to answer the question regarding race. 82.6% identified as white. 79% identified as not Hispanic or Latino, but then again, people had the option not to answer that, and 15.9% preferred not to answer the ethnicity question. Facebook was the most popular source of hearing about the survey. Other areas include word of mouth, email, commission members, alders newsletters, and Nextdoor. So somebody did put it on the Nextdoor app. So that's just a little bit of a breakdown of, who responded to the survey, and again, those trends of what were the top qualities. I'd like to kind of turn it over to Jeff then to kind of discuss in further detail anything that you wanted to talk about related to the survey.
Yeah, I guess if I recall from the last survey that was put out, accountability was the top of the list. So that it doesn't surprise me, I guess, since we asked that question again, since that came up again. And it is sort of a general catch-all, I think, for what a lot of people would like to see in a police chief and a leader. I would like to see the previous and just see if respect was the same or not, and whether that's something that's currently trended. Community engagement, I guess, in the last section, and communication, that something that I had just talked about previously as well. So it makes sense that would be on there, and I'm glad that a lot of local or police officers, they weren't necessarily Fitchburg police officers.
They
it was
were.
because we only got sent to. Okay.
Yep.
I'm glad that we had that large of a response and we were able to capture that.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments, I guess, on the results, and we certainly can talk about direction and how we want to use them, but just comments in general first.
When I thought the comments were really raw. I really enjoyed reading it, and it's not all glamorous and glorious. I think there's definitely some things to absorb and to make sure that we acknowledge during this process so we can hear them, because I think this is definitely that they feel they may not be being heard or supported. So I like the comment section. I like this part as well. I think that's great, but I really enjoy the comment section. I think people gave us some good input.
Well,
Comments?
I'd just say, nice job, Sarah, getting the word out, and the fact that we got so many responses is wonderful. And thank you, as like you said, to the alders and to Rosa and to everyone who was making sure that this was out in the community. That's great. And Sheena, too, the raw comments are wonderfully helpful, and I think helpful for us, but also helpful for council members to pay attention to as well, because there's a lot of comments that are outside of our scope as a Police and Fire Commission, but certainly relevant to the upcoming budget discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Rosa, any observations?
Sure, I'll always say something. Well, I'm disappointed that we didn't get to more responses from the Latino community and the African American community. So I'm assuming that next time our outreach has to be a little bit different. And one thing that I heard in comments was the time, that people didn't have enough time. I didn't realize that last weekend was Father's Day weekend, and there were a lot of people out of town or celebrating. So, but I agree with your comment that there were actually some responses that I was like, whoa, surprised of what I heard. So I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, I guess I would just, in regards to outreach, I do think that from previous, recruitment to this recruitment, I think there was an improvement. And it's beyond a bit of the purview of this commission, obviously. But it would be great if the city and just government broadly had an effective across-the-board way of really communicating out more effectively and reaching out to constituents.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even pretend to I don't have an answer for that. But I do just wonder if there aren't tools out there or companies out there that specialized in this. It may be something the city would want to look into or consider. So, just because if you could get more responses and more engagement, I think it would just be better.
Yeah.
I would like the people that have showed concern or expressed or they just expressed some concern about not being able to fill it out. I would like, can they still, I mean, they can still fill it out, right? So maybe those who you've connected with that have been disappointed with the amount of time that it's been available, say, you know, you can still go online, we can still, you know, hear you.
Yeah, I did tell people, disregard the deadline and submit the survey. And you gave me, I took about 175 comments.
That's fantastic.
And I, you know, we gave them out. So there was one person in particular that says, police, no, I don't want to talk about police. I don't want to. I said, well, you are the kind of person we would like to hear about. What's your concerns? So there's work to be done. But I still believe that we got a good response.
I think we got a great, in the short, because what did we have at the last meeting? We were concerned about our response, right? We were concerned we weren't getting, and I feel like in that short period of time, everybody kind of pushed it a little bit, and
I think we had under 100 at our last meeting.
Okay, so that's
So it was a
fantastic. Yeah,
good
that's huge.
push.
Just shows what a little effort on our end can do, and so,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
I guess I would just say too, that sort of moving a bit, I guess, forward to questions for the second and third panels. That's one of the topics for later, I guess, but we certainly could, I think, generate some themes out of the comments. There was certainly community engagement as a theme. There was reduction of crime as a theme, and a lot of, I guess, like burglary, break-in, speeding. There was many that referenced that, and this is very unscientific. But I just sort of tallied up a little bit, you know, and there certainly were some themes that came out of those that I think we could probably focus some of those questions towards potentially, and you know, and leverage that, and sort of use what the community actually said and responded with, and actually hopefully ask some of those poignant questions.
That would be
Alright.
excellent. That's similar to what we did for administrator. We took those survey results, and that's how we formed our questions and our benchmarks, and it really helped us along the process. So.
All right, further discussion on the survey or questions? Okay, next item.
Okay, and so we have included in the packet, we have a milestone in meetings for the police chief hiring process. We thought this would be helpful. Jeff and I worked on this to help identify the upcoming dates and what exactly we would be doing. So, you know, as you know, we're in this meeting today. Our next one that we would be looking at holding would be July 6th. This is a really important meeting. So this is after the applications have been scored. So the closing date for the police chief is June 28th. So assuming we have a good qualified pool of candidates, then we can get that batch to the panel. We have a professional panel that will score those applications using the benchmarks or rating criteria that we're going to look at here in closed session. Assuming that that works well, and we're going to bring a candidate profile for each one of those, including the application scoring results, and that would be to the PFC in closed session on July 6th. At that meeting, you would go through each of those and then decide who would come in for the first panel interviews.
I'm missing that meeting. I won't be in town.
is there still gonna be the option to join
And I hate
virtually?
to miss it.
We could look into having it in the chambers and seeing if there's a meeting behind us on July 6th to make sure, so we could see about a Zoom option.
If you could, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely, yep.
Sure. I mean, if we can do that, it would be great to have as many obviously commissioners here as we
Yeah.
can.
That may be one where we have more public input as well, which, you know, that would make it more accessible with the Zoom options available for that.
Right, exactly. We'll be in closed session looking at the candidates though, because we'll be talking about specific, you know, qualifications, but, you know, that's ideally what we're gonna be doing in that meeting. But the week of July 19th, we have pegged our interviews and our community panel presentation. So we actually already have all of our panels kind of set. Thank you, all of you, for reaching out and giving names of individuals that would be good. We've got a whole array of whether they're community members or they're in the policing profession or they're business leaders. So we have a really nice diverse group at every step in the process. And we're probably looking at either I don't like to hold interviews on Mondays, but the only other day would be Wednesday, July 21st, which is the night of our PFC. But I think that's going to be our interview day and our community panel presentation, which will work out kind of nice because right after that day events, we can bring an update to the PFC about how all of that went. So we are looking at holding interviews and presentations on Wednesday, July 19th or 21st. You don't have to be involved in those steps. You're going to be meeting the finalists later on at early August, but you'll be able to hear about how the day went that evening. So yeah, so we just tried to provide some more clarification. It seems like there's so many different steps in the process that we have to discuss, but one of the other really important things that we're going to talk about is the public reception. And actually, I think we're going to do that in the July 6th meeting. We need to get some details down as far as like where we're holding the public reception, what time, you know, and that would be a good spot for public input too, is how do the public members meet the candidates?
Where was the city administrator one held?
It was held here, but this isn't necessarily accessible. You know, it's not on a bus line. It's not near a neighborhood necessarily. Well, it's in near neighborhoods, but we were getting some ideas from some of the personnel committee members. They talked about Leopold School. They mentioned Boys and Girls Club. I mean, there's many different areas, you know, we could reach out to see if we could hold something if the commission decides that that would be the route to go. And then thinking about time and what it would look like, who would your moderator be for that evening, asking the questions. Did you want to utilize Mayor Richardson like the administrator, or did you want to reach out to a third party? A lot of different things to talk through.
How far ahead do you think we need to think about, like, getting a facility? So in other words, just specifically, I'm thinking about Dunn's Marsh Girls and Boys Club. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
And then also the Leopold would be another, I think, good option.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of having it in a school.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's just, you know, community, right? So, and that's something that they could bring to the folks that actually go there and potentially just, you know, attract a lot more people.
Yeah.
So do we have, I mean, how far in advance can we need to make that decision?
As soon as possible. So like if at the July 6th meeting, you could determine that, yep, we're going to hold it on, you know, the evening of August 3rd or August 4th. We kind of already have the two dates in mind. It's either August 3rd or August 4th. This is an all-day event, you know, because that's when you're having your PFC interviews. That's when you're, you know, going to be meeting with HR and the mayor for summary from those that gave the city tour. There's a lot of events. The public reception's like that end of the day event. So we have to figure out which day works best. And right now, all of these dates work with the conference and the council chambers and all of that, but the public reception obviously is something we'd have to work with another agency on to see when they're available.
Okay. And you don't think July 6th is too late for that? That should be okay?
I'm hoping.
I just don't want to miss out, that's all.
Exactly.
Well, maybe we start seeking input and data points on whether we can hold it at certain places and then
Exactly.
I guess, yeah.
hold them almost.
So to that end, can we have that conversation like right now?
Yeah.
And I think that those two are, as far as I'm considered, would be good options. Do people have other ideas?
For the public reception?
Yes.
Explain to me a little more about the public reception, because there's so much stuff going that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking the public reception is just to greet the candidates, the finalists?
No, it's a little bit more. It's actually putting them on the spot and asking them some questions. So did you attend the city administrator public reception?
I did not.
So we actually had them sit up at the council chambers. We had each candidate, and then we let them know ahead of time what questions we were going to ask them. We asked them each, I think it was 4 questions. It was the same question, but we started with a different person each time. But it gave the community an opportunity to be there, hear them answer questions, and then even at the end, Mayor Richardson asked if anyone in the audience had questions.
Okay.
This is where we can ask the public, what questions would you like us to ask the candidates? And then we can finalize those questions and use those even ahead of time to ask.
Which brings me to the question, what prep are we going to have prior to the meeting? Because we're thinking of doing it in the community, the school. So what outreach are we going to do? What are we going to, so
That's
that
what
we
we have
guarantee
to-
that we get, maybe this is our chance to get better representation.
Exactly. That's the goal. So as soon as possible. So I guess the first step would to see if we can even hold it in the school, and if they're available either August 3rd or August 4th. And if they are, and if we can do that, then to let the commission know that we should start thinking about some type of communication to go out to give people at least a month in advance to know that, hey,
Yes.
this is coming up.
The other question I have, if we, the same thing we did with the survey, we're gonna have Spanish-speaking people, hopefully, so are we gonna have like, what do you-
Translator, interpreter?
translator, but not in the same room, because that gets complicated. Are we gonna have a room for Spanish-speaking people, or so that they could have closed circuit, they could be watching
That's a great idea. That was another recommendation from Joel Maldonado with the Personnel Committee, is to have some type of interpreter there for Spanish speaking, for example, so that, it's not just set up for English speaking. So we'd have to think about how that would work,
Yeah.
the logistics of all of that.
I think if we have it all in the same room, it could
Mhm.
become, well, complicated, I'm gonna use that term.
Yeah.
Because then it's a lot of interruption, and people that, they don't speak the language have to wait for this translation. So I think, not to separate the people, but if we have to separate, then we separate,
Yeah.
just so that the communication is better.
Agreed, and that means we'd have to find an interpreter too. So there's a lot of logistics here, so making sure we're reaching out sooner than later, so we're not running out of
Yeah.
time. Okay. So maybe what we could do is circle this week, I could reach out to Leopold and/or Boys Girls. Do you want me to reach out to both?
I think so, yes.
Commission? Okay.
Does
And we'll
everybody-
see.
Yeah.
Those two seem like two good options. And I
Okay.
guess if anybody obviously has other options and we think about it after the meeting or
Yeah.
whatnot, I think we could just reach out and
Yeah.
make that suggestion. You could reach out to them as well. And
Perfect.
we're, at this point, we're not making a decision. We're really just
Mhm.
checking to
Weighing
see
out
if there's
options.
availability, what kind of facility they have and
Yeah.
what kind of options.
And for timing, so, typically, do you want to do this toward the end of the day when people are available? Are you thinking like a 6:30, 7 PM, or is that too late, or what are you thinking for time?
I would I guess I would like to do it, certainly, after regular business hours.
Right.
Hoping that
Seven?
as many people could be there as possible.
Yeah.
So I would say even say 7 if
7
possible.
sounds kind of
7
like.
PM.
Even after dinner
Okay.
with the kids, right? So,
Mhm.
Yep. And there was a literal reception afterwards as well for the city administrator, where
There
people
was,
could.
we didn't have refreshments or anything
Right.
like that, but there was a chance for informal meet and greet with the
Yep.
candidate. Yeah, we definitely wanted to have that informal part too, so people
Mhm.
could just walk up and talk to the finalists.
okay.
How long does it last?
We had about, I want to say an hour and a half for the city administrator. About the first hour was just the questions with the 4 candidates, and then the last half an hour was an opportunity for people just to, and they stuck around, the candidates stuck around
Okay.
until all questions were answered.
One thing I liked about that city administrator process was that the public got to ask questions just raw of the candidates, not planned questions that they were able to prepare for. And I think that's important for as a communicator, it's going to be important for the chief to respond to questions like that. So I thought that was helpful.
Yeah, and that sounds great. I mean, it sort of gets back to some of the comments that we got too, right? So we put out a survey, and I think that's great, and I think that we got good, and then like you had said, some raw responses. But I also think there's an accountability level at something like this for individuals to actually stand up and ask those questions if they really do have those concerns. I know it's difficult for some people, but I like the idea of having that real interaction.
Yes.
Because there's going to be, challenging questions to the chief of police.
There
so-
should be.
Yep, well, not just in the process, I just mean
Right.
in the position.
Out on the streets
Exactly.
every
You got
day, yeah.
So I think that it's good to have that interaction.
Well, and we asked the same question for each candidate too, which was nice. So even the raw questions that came out, we weren't prepared for, we asked each candidate. So it gave a good comparison. Are you thinking about doing that same type of thing?
Yeah.
So the candidates, you ask each one the same question, do they hear the other's response?
Yes. Yep. They're all together up there. Yeah.
And then I'm assuming if there's 4 questions, you take a turn of who goes
Exactly. Not everybody gets to ask the
Next.
first time.
first. Yeah, I am confident that you were doing that. So in regards to that day, so if that's an hour and a half and it's at the end of the day, I guess, can you just talk a little bit about how that day flows? Because like you were saying, that there's a lot of stuff going on.
Absolutely.
So, and then like, and I think that we would want to get together after all of those things, right? And gather that information and have the conversation that we need to have.
Yeah, if we can have the public reception the evening of August 3rd, then August 4th would be nice for HR and the mayor to meet with the PFC to talk about the city tours. So our 2 lieutenants and our police services manager are giving tours to all the candidates, so in the department and also around the city. So it'd be great to get their feedback. We'll share that with you. And then also for you to actually interview the candidate. So I'm thinking you'd interview the day of the public reception. And then the 4th is the decision time, you know, trying to figure out, let's talk about how everything went, you know, who do we want to further background. So then when we have our last meeting in August, we can actually approve the hire in closed session. So imagine 2-day event, but you don't necessarily have to be available for the full day, both days. It's rather, you're going to be available for interviews, to meet individually with each finalist in closed session. And then you'll hear from Mayor Richardson and I, and then the following day to have that closed session discussion about who you felt was the strongest candidate.
And so just so I'm kind of getting the flow, so the August 3rd would be meet with HR and meet with the mayor, do the city tours, probably us actually interview them in closed session, and then the public reception.
You got it.
And then on the 4th, we would get together with the mayor and HR, have our conversation and get your input. Whoever actually did the city tours as well, that would be, I think, useful to have that input as well. And then we would obviously have a closed session at that point and make determinations.
And you may find you have more than one candidate that you think is strong that you'd like for there to be a thorough background on, and that's okay. That might happen. So what we'll do is reach out to another neighboring municipality to actually run that criminal background check. That's not something HR does. We have a real thorough, it's a detective that would run that.
So, and you know, one of the themes that came out of the survey was that the city's looking for someone with a high level of integrity, and that background check makes a difference. And, you know, there are certainly different gradations of background check that you can run. Are we talking full criminal background, kind of, you know, community background as well, with personal interviews of people and in their life, and not only checking references that are sent to you, but also proactively going out and seeking?
It's exactly what a police officer has to go through, which is everything from a credit report to meeting with neighbors, a home visit. It's everything you can think of, psychological exam even. So we wanted to make sure our police chief is going through the same protocol as our police officer. So that's how we've always done it with police chief processes here, and I think that's a good practice for us to continue.
Is there another level of background check more than what a police officer goes through? I don't know the answer to that.
They're at the highest. We don't have a deeper investigation. Even some of our department heads don't have as much of a thorough investigation as our police officers. So it is the deepest as possible.
Yeah. I've done background checks, and like I said, they can put 3-4 references, and then you build. You talk to someone and say, well, blah, blah, and then you go and keep checking.
Great.
So.
Yeah, even if they're from out of state, we will send them, you know, the detective will go to their out of state place. I mean, even for our officers here, if someone lives in Florida, we fly our detective to Florida, and they actually meet face to face with people.
But it won't be a Fitchburg detective doing the
No,
background
it would
check,
be a
okay.
municipality outside of Fitchburg. So, for example, I think we used Rock County when we performed Chad Brucklin's background.
Okay.
Yep.
It sounds like a long day.
Yeah.
It's a long day.
For everybody involved, I'm sure. I'd throw in to start the reception at 6. I think that gives people time to get off work still, you know, grab a quick something to eat. I'd hate to extend, because now we're talking like almost 8:30, 9 o'clock that people are gonna.
We had it at 6:30 for the administrator. It worked out really good.
Okay.
6 or 6:30,
Okay.
I think is.
I like that time.
Yep,
Yeah,
I agree.
I think 6:30 is
I'm open.
I do think that, you know, you're gonna run into people have all
Yes,
sorts of
all
things in
different
their life.
schedules,
We have
right.
folks that work at night, right? So there's one
Yes,
of them.
and they
So,
can.
and they wouldn't be able to make it, so,
Yeah.
But anyways, I think
can't
that we
make-
need to try to be accommodating, and 6:30 seems like
A
it's.
good, happy medium.
Yeah.
How did you feel the same questions for all the different candidates? I could see that going one way that I don't know as if it would be, did you find that productive?
We did, actually, and we were getting different responses. You could see just I would say the level of competence and their qualifications really shine through their
Okay.
responses. You could see who was maybe more of a stronger communicator or who had more experience in a certain area. It was interesting. We weren't quite sure how it was going to work out and whether we liked that approach, but actually it worked out really nice.
You didn't get a lot of the same answers and the
No.
same.
It all depends on the questions that we ask. So,
Okay.
And do we get to see those questions? I mean, what
the
input do
commission
we-
would be the ones to choose those questions. So,
Okay, we choose the question for the public reception.
yeah, you
then.
choose a few of them, but then at the end, how we did it for administrators, we had it open to the public. So we
Okay.
actually had a half an hour left, and we said, does anyone from the audience have
Right.
questions? So then we actually, at first, nobody wanted to raise their hand, and then we actually started
One
getting
person
interest.
raised it.
That's the concern if we don't have canned questions, is that if we bring everybody together in a room and then waiting for people to ask a question, there's that unpredictability piece there.
So, and one of the things, I know you and I sort of went through this timeline and sort of tried to put it together in sort of a better presentation and easier to follow. One of the things that I think we may have missed, or maybe I just am, but the generation of those questions, it's worthy of an in-depth conversation, taking the comments from the public, and obviously, and we all have, at this point, have gone through a bunch of questions and have some insight into those things. But it's not on here as far as a meeting time and when we would actually do that. And I do think that that's potentially going to be a conversation that's going to take a little time.
If we wait until July 21st, that gives us almost a whole month to get more responses back from the community with paper and electronic. And then we already have a closed session to talk about who to bring in as a finalist. And again, that's on July 21st at a regular scheduled meeting.
Mhm.
It might not be a bad idea to add that as a open session meeting or
So
agenda.
those would be the questions for the August 3rd date?
It would be closed session, I'm sorry, because we wouldn't necessarily want the
Right,
candidates
yes,
to know
yes,
those
yep.
questions, or finalists to know those
Um,
questions.
And those would be questions generated for the August 3rd questions?
Exactly.
But what about the?
For the panel.
For the panels? So both the professional, I'm assuming maybe that they're going to have something to say about that. We probably should follow their lead a little bit. But certainly the community panel
Mhm. Public.
interviews, I guess, what is our involvement in that?
Yeah, so we have it here, July 6th. It says, following review of the above, commission to decide who will come in and the interview questions to use in closed session.
Okay.
Also to decide the community panel presentation topic and the scoring criteria. So I'll bring a slew of different ideas for the commission to think about, and you bring ideas as well. And then in
Okay.
closed session, we'll finalize those interview questions and the community panel presentation topic and rating criteria.
Great. I missed that. But it's also good to know when that's coming, so we can
Yeah.
put some thought into that up front.
Exactly. So July 6th will be a big meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, yes. I do have a question, something I don't want to forget. When we do the interviews of the candidates on August 3rd, something that we had trouble last time, it wasn't very clear about follow-up questions of the candidates. And I like to talk about that, make sure that we do it correctly, I don't know, so that, but we had a lot of questions that we would have wanted to ask of each, different ones, depending on what they said.
Was this for the commission or was this for the
For
first
the
panel?
commission,
Yeah, so
for-
for the commission, you have that latitude to be a little more
Mhm.
flexible and not as formal. So for the first panel interview questions, we want the panel to stick to the questions that we have. They can ask clarifying, but for the commission, when you meet with the finalists, you can have that more informal discussion. Council did the same thing, but what they ended up doing was asking basically the same types of questions. So council started off with one question for each city administrator candidate. And then they developed their own questions based on their qualifications and what they wanted to learn about that finalist. But how it ended up working is after that first candidate, they just ended up using those same types of questions for the rest of the candidates. So it's an opportunity for you to have more of a informal, think about as an informal second interview. you don't have to stick to exactly the questions that you have in front of you. You can have one question that you kind of start out with that's universal and the same for each candidate, but you have more latitude and flexibility. It's not like a first panel interview.
Right, so you ask me a question, I say whatever I want to say, answer my question, and then, something you think, maybe I need to, could
Absolutely.
you expand on this? Could you clarify this?
Absolutely.
is-
That is totally permissible. Yep.
All right, some more questions about the timeline, or I think that was good as far as clarifying that.
So then we'll go into closed for the scoring criteria.
All right. Would somebody lead us into closed session by reading?
Where is, well, sure, I could read it. Pursuant to section 19.85, paren 1, paren E of the Wisconsin statutes, the commission will move into closed session for the purpose of considering employment promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, more specifically to review and discuss the application scoring and evaluation criteria to be used for a competitive recruitment process.
Thank you, Rosa. Do we have a motion to move into closed session?
Second?
Very good. All in favor of moving to closed session, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. And closed session. All right, welcome back. We're out of closed session. I have a few announcements, and then we may have one item to address. So on the announcement side, I just wanted to tell everybody that we are, the PFC has decided to keep the community survey open until July 21st, just so that more members of the public can respond and they can have input into the process. And then in addition to that, we also have a new phone number for the PFC and a new email address. Those are available publicly on the PFC, the Fitchburg PFC's community website. But the email address is pfc@fitchburg.wi.gov. And the phone number is 608-270-4325. And that would be a method, either one of those would be good methods for if you have comments for the commission, concerns about the process, and so forth. You can use those to communicate with the commission. All right, do we have any action items coming out of closed session?
So I'll make a motion to approve the application scoring criteria.
Second?
Second, very good. All in favor of said motion? Raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, very good. Motion passed. Any announcements from anybody? No. All right, very good. If there aren't any announcements, we can call the meeting to adjournment. Thanks, guys.
I'll move to adjourn.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Second.
Second, excellent, and we're adjourned.
Awesome, great meeting.
Good
I feel like
meeting,
we got
yes,
a lot
good
done.
meeting.
Thank you,
Yeah,
yes.